This isn't female empowerment. This is a last resort. Students, teachers, and housewives forced out of their homes, now training to fire a gun. Driven by the horror of their new reality and the little chance of leaving this country. Why have you come to this training? We've come to protect ourselves, our children, all we stand for against all we've seen, she says. We've seen so much. It's an insane tragedy. She says her nephew was killed by the RSF and that they abducted her niece. The military is yet to restore their old lives. Destroyed by the militia, the army itself once partnered and trained. Now they're training these women to fight their shared enemy if this city falls to the RSF like so many others. Tucked in the corner of a military hospital is a dark picture of civilian recruitment. A bullet hit his spine through his shoulder, and the only movement left is in his face. He's 18 and he signed up, he says, because living conditions are so tough that he needs the pay. And now he's paralyzed, potentially for life. Did you see it coming, I ask. You don't see a bullet coming, he says. You just hear the sound and then it hits you. His carer is another new recruit, a 20-year-old university student, with no place to go now but the front line or the hospital.
We would be studying right now. We never had anything to do with the military. It wasn't even on our minds. But the RSF treated us in the most inhumane way, like we are dogs.
They're here from battlegrounds all over Sudan, and the loss of blood has come with the loss of loved ones, ambushed in their homes by the RSF in pillaging of the worst kind. Civilian hospitals are heaving too, and the grief of dispossession is making illness even harder to fight.
I have nothing. They took everything in my home. Fridges, washing machines, air conditioners, motors, cupboards and beds. Everything.
Sudan now has the largest displaced population in the world, but funding for humanitarian support is barely trickling in.
You know, when you look at what's happening in the Middle East and Gaza, when you look at what's happening in Ukraine, there's a lot of competing demands for limited donor dollars. Sudan is the biggest humanitarian crisis we have today, and we desperately need international support.
For now, every free space is a shelter, and everyone we speak to is longing to leave. Syrians who came to Sudan for safety from their own war, struggling to resettle again after another traumatic upheaval. And the family they've made here, displaced many times in this war alone. In a split second, everything was destroyed, she says. Schools have been closed for the 10 months of this war, and they too have become shelters. But little aid makes it here, even as terror gives way to despair. The RSF were abducting children in the area, says Najla. They even took my neighbor's children. They jumped my wall, broke down my door, and forced me out at gunpoint. I've come to this displacement center with 2 asthmatic children. We sleep on cardboard, she says.
And it's so hard being here. Like, life is so hard over here.
Even those who fled at the start of the war are struggling to build a life in Port Sudan. Suad was a physiotherapist at the start of her career, now left with more questions than answers. How do you feel when you wake up in the morning?
Like, I don't know what's coming next. I always think about the day, you know. I just wanted the day to end, because I don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow. Like, seriously, maybe they'll come again. Maybe, like, I'm gonna lose where I'm living right now.
A country already on its knees is now being strangled by violence, hunger, and disease. Sudan's trapped civilians are desperately holding on to life. only for each day of life to become harder to bear. Yousra Elbagir, Sky News, Port Sudan.